Hi, and welcome to Mic Drop, Insights and Lessons from CI Thought Leaders. My name is Gary Cox. I am your host. I am also the author of the book, Cultivating Champions of CI, a leader's toolbox for creating a continuous improvement culture. I've met some interesting people in my career, and today Trish Wilson tops in the top 5, anyway, of the most interesting people I've had a chance to talk to. She's known as a global connector, and what she does is she connects like-minded people around continuous improvement so that they can sort of like have a think tank around continuous improvement. She's an improvement artist is what I call her. You're going to find her fascinating. This is part 1 of a 2-part episode with Trish. Let's jump right in and I'll let you get to know her. So welcome to the program. I'm really excited to have you.
Cool, thank you. And thanks for reaching out, because that's what it's all about. It's like finding the not random, but random people across the world who are just doing good things in the improvement sphere, and how can we all connect and work together.
And that's, I think, again, what intrigued me about when I read your profile. And so tell the folks who are not connected with you, because we're going to encourage them to connect with you. Tell them a little bit about what you do and why you do it.
Well, I kind of made it up, looking back and looking forward and looking around the world. I can't find anyone doing something similar to what I'm, exactly what I'm doing. There's a couple of people doing something similar, but not from the point of view of how do you bring, and I think you like this word when we were talking on another day, improvement artists. So there's all these improvement people trying to make the world of our work, and there's a Maori, so the indigenous people of New Zealand are the Maori people, and there's a Maori word called mahi, M-A-H-I, and it's sort of like what we do, what we're about, what we do in the world. And I think like there's a lot of people trying to improve the world of our mahi, and how do we bring them together like improvement artists? Like someone like Quincy Jones would bring improvement artists together, and what a great combinations and connections, so that people can really actually a friend of mine in Melbourne, or part of a network there, she was like, amplify and leverage and accelerate, all what we're all doing. Because if if everyone's just doing it in silos, even if they're not a closed silo, we're not getting the magic that we could. So I thought, well, how do we connect the dots across? And it started in New Zealand, and then it went global, because hey, why not?
Which is pretty exciting. So yeah, we're going to get people to connect with you. I'll put your link, your profile link, in the description of the video so that they can absolutely get that. I'll make sure that that's registered. But what has that experience been like for you? I mean, obviously you and I have connected, but you've made a lot of other connections. Talk a little bit about the things that have been accomplished through that.
It's a good question, and when I say it's a good question, there's sort of like two parts to it. One, I think you've got to be the sort of person who's just like genuinely curious and genuinely interested, and you take someone will say, oh, this person's doing XYZ. Like I think there's a person doing lean farming in New Zealand, for example, that you were talking about, and I've sort of partly connected with her, but then you go and investigate, and you think, what's she about, and what's she doing, and what's lean farming, and then you might go, oh, well, she's connected with this person, and I know that person. So you build like this sort of like synapses of webs of a network. But I could give you a few examples. One was I ran a conference, and there were 2 people there who actually had the same foundation approach. They were using 2-second lean, was their way they were looking at how they structured their improvement work. And I introduced them to each other, and one of them, or they obviously got on, but one of them said, oh, I've met my improvement twin, and she was just like so excited to meet someone who thought the same way, was using the same structure for what she was doing. There was somebody else who she was in New Zealand. They were both in New Zealand. There was one in America, and she came along to some of the network activities, and they're really personalized. So it's not, you don't invite 20 people and 10 people to show up. You invite 10 people and 10 people show up. So you know who's coming, and you can't just not come. Otherwise, it's like being invited to a dinner party and just not showing up. You just don't do that. So it's
Right.
quite a personalized thing. So she came to some of these events, and then later on she navigated her own journey into what role she wanted to be and how she wanted to be showing up. And she said she couldn't have done it without the network, without being part of the network. Someone else said, where else would I have met that person? Where else would I have come across that person that you've introduced me to? And it's sometimes it's within the country, and sometimes it's across countries. So like my friend Brenton, who I'm going to meet this morning, I connected him with someone in South Africa, and someone in Australia. So I'm in New Zealand, he's in the UK, South Africa, and Australia. And then I've got another person in South Africa, and I reached out to him because he was doing interesting stuff, and we had some chats and stuff. And then it's been about 4 years since I've had any contact with him, and he messaged me the other day and he goes, "Oh, should we have a meetup?" So we did, and he said to me, "Trish, it was you started it." I said, "What did I do?" He said, "Well, you got me into the habit of like just speaking to random people, reaching out to people on LinkedIn." He said, "I've reached out." He's always had a lot of really big picture improvements and changes going on, real systems thinking, blockchain, he's now got to a point where he's reached out, and he's got the funding that he actually needs for his project, in quite significant amount of funding. But he said, if it wasn't for you and what you're doing and reaching out and just talking to people, you inspired me. I've done it. Now look where I've got to.
So it's really interesting. As I was listening to you, I was thinking to myself, you're the human LinkedIn, right? You're the human version of LinkedIn, in that LinkedIn will often make recommendations for connections, and right, based on your profile and based on things, right? But you're doing that organically in your own mind as you build people. You're putting the pieces together to say, hey, this person should know this person, and so on. So do you organize events for that to happen, or does that, because you just mentioned this event that happens, was that something you were invited to, or something you arranged?
Something I arranged.
Okay.
So yeah, it's hard to, I've tried doing a membership network. I tried it in New Zealand. I haven't tried it globally, but there's a lot of networks which are set. We're going to have 10 meetups per year and this many networking sessions and this many, set number. But it depends what people want and need. And I discovered some people just want to be on the other end of an email, and that they're busy doing their stuff, but if you send them an inspirational email periodically, then they're happy. Some people want to have a conversation. They want to be able to ring up and go, "Oh, I've just had this idea, blah 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 blah. Oh, thanks, Trish," and just go away again. And then some people want to come to meetings. So it was all a lot of variety. So it's never set. So are there meetings and meetups and events? Yes. Are they ever set in a calendar? Can you say, "Oh, here's the calendar for the year"? No. So
Okay.
I would get a group of people, and I'd think, "Oh, I'm starting to get a group of people who might like to hang out, get to know each other, have a session." So then I'd create an event around that.
Okay. And what does the event consist of? Because obviously you just don't want to bring people together and have lunch. Well, maybe that is what you do. I don't know. But it would seem that when you bring them together to discuss the fact that they're all like-minded continuous improvement thinkers, do you come with an agenda? How does the day unfold?
Again, that depends on who's coming. So there's some good examples, and I'll use some New Zealand examples, but there are global examples as well. I ran one at the end of last year with one of my very good friends, Amanda, who's from America. She's now living in New Zealand. And we just reached out to New Zealand improvement people and said, "Who wants to jump on a call?" And it will be, what's going on in your improvement world. And so that was quite open. But you mentioned being a human LinkedIn. There's a lot of background that goes into this, and I think that's the magic. But that also makes it harder, because it's, you go to some meetings and rock up, and then they'll say, "Oh, let's network, and we'll put you in breakout rooms," and you're sort of like, "Who are you, and what do you?" You've got to you've got to do a lot of work yourself to figure out who this person is and where's the crossover and where's the connection. So for that particular meetup, we shared everyone's LinkedIn profiles in advance, who they are, who's coming. I asked them a one-liner, so I shared all the one-liners, so you can go, here's everyone who's in the room, here's what they're all thinking about, so that then when you are doing the exchanges and interactions, you've got far more of a base to work from, to get excited about. Oh yes, people are on the same wavelength or thinking the same thing as me. And what was really interesting in that is we never did breakout group rooms. We thought about it, but everyone actually managed, I guess because of how you as the sort of like the host set it up, they managed to interact with each other. And I guess it's because you've built the relationships and the connections, and so they trust you as the host, therefore they trust each other. And they also, and I was quite clear up front about Man and Amanda, but a lot of the ones I run, it's like equal space as much as we can for people. And so then people will sort of speak and then stop speaking, and so they nobody was sort of hogging if that's a word that goes around the world. But one other thing, the story I liked about
go ahead. No.
A story I really liked about that is someone was quiet, and they, it was an hour and a half. It ended up an hour and a half meeting, and someone was very quiet, and I was like, okay, you need to. Where's some input? We don't want to leave you out. If you don't want to speak, that's fine, because you've got to speak, right? Anyway, we got to the end, and he was obviously taking it all in, and had a great time, and he was like, have you all been spying on my life, on my work life? Because he was like, you're all saying the same thing as me. And then you're like, well, that's great, because that's another piece of the puzzle, knowing that people have really interacted well with each other and got ideas, got inspiration, not feel alone. Though you asked me, that one was sort of more like a organized jam session, but then there are topics. Someone will say, I really want to talk about X. And so then you organize it around X. So this person wants to talk about this. Who else wants to talk about it?
That's interesting. Like here we have a lot of consortiums. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, with the arrangement of the consortiums, but we have a lot of groups that I say pay for memberships, and they have a consortium where they, to your point, they meet on a fairly regular cycle. They maybe do tours of each other's facilities and sort of grow and learn that way. But you've taken that to a very different place in a different way. And what I think, you talked about the organicness of the jazz behind it, right? It's not as orchestrated as you're comfortable with it not being as structured as it might some of other events. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I would say so.
I'm thinking you're like the master brainstormer when it comes to getting people to engage with sharing of ideas and addressing challenges and problems. And I wonder if you use a structured framework in your sessions.
Somewhat, I think. I guess if you go back to the jazz analogy, and I started off life as a classical flute player, so not a jazz musician, but I understand. We studied next to the jazz musicians, so I've got a little bit of an understanding. But they have a huge amount of structure behind their improvisation.
Right.
So they've done, so I think people would be surprised at just how much work goes on behind the scenes, even though it looks like it's unstructured once you get there. So,
that's exactly what I'm getting at. Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. So you have this underlying structure that you kind of have in place, or do you expect all of the others to bring their structured knowledge and things with them? Because sometimes that's what I guess. Again, I've never been a part of a jazz band either, but I get this impression. It always appears that just these people come together and suddenly they're making this great music, and you kind of think, wow, that was kind of really interesting to see. And that's kind of what I envision when you bring people together.
Yeah, I think the content, and it is a great analogy, and I have been using it more and more, because I think the content is like improvised jazz, because but the setup, so knowing who people are, having interactions with them, so that you've got an idea of, okay, you're this sort of person, or this is your focus, or this is what you've been doing, sort of. So getting to know the individual, but then setting up a structure that you expect people all to speak. I've got this, one of the networks that I never miss is run out of Melbourne by an amazing lady called Josie, and she's always like, there's no passengers, so so no passengers, no, you can't just sit there on the sideline. And I mean, you can be, you don't have to be, massively extroverted and out there all the time. It's not like you have to change your personality, but you have to speak. You have to be part of things.
Mm-hmm.
But and so you do a lot of setup in terms of like, this is how it'll run. For example, I never do roundtable introductions in my sessions, because that takes a lot of time. It's unnecessary. Go and look at people's LinkedIn profiles. You've got the setup already. You don't need that. So we can just, so we're like, right, let's just jump in, pick up your instrument and let's play. But then also, I guess what you do need, and what happened, perhaps it's a good example in that one I ran the end of last year in New Zealand, you need people who understand it and me and the way things run quite well. And so I had some people who have been around the network for a while, so they knew the style of it, so they were jumping in. And so they were a good catalyst for the session. And so then you're watching how they're doing it, going, yep, that's good. I don't need to say anything. So I just to digress, to come back to that one, I actually I connected some people from the blood service, so the UK blood service and the Australian blood service, because I'd met some people from the Australian blood service I think I met them at the LEI conference, or LEA version of the Australian version. And then it was going to be the Welsh blood service, but they couldn't come. Anyway, I put them together, and it was the same thing. You did the whole setup. It was an hour and a half on Zoom, obviously. And one of the ladies there, she had been around the sort of like the flavor of the network for a while. And I thought, okay, I need to do some sort of setup or some sort of introduction, because these people don't know each other. It's how are we going to make this run? Anyway, so we got on call, hour and a half. I basically just said, hi, welcome, and this is, I don't think I said very much at all. She asked a question, and honestly, in the next hour and a half, I literally talked for about 2 minutes.
Wow. Well, I guess
that's so you also which was fabulous, because then they were going, well, how do you do this? Oh, but do you find a problem with XYZ when you're doing improvement in your service? And what format do you use, or what template can we have a copy of that template? And they were just like sharing backwards and forwards for an hour and a half. And so that's another element, I think, of how you put people together, is you have to be you sort of got to be very confidently humble. So you've got to be confident to go, right, I'm putting these random people together, and they're going, because some of them I didn't know, they're like, who on earth are you, Trish? But then humble enough that if you only speak for 2 minutes in an hour and a half, you don't need to speak anymore.
Right, because your mission has been accomplished. It's almost like I think of almost like a Kaizen conference. It's like a blitz of the conference. It's interesting you talk about blood services. So afterwards, we're going to have to talk. One of my former colleagues at Canada Post is now a pretty strong lean advocate at the Canadian Blood Services.
Cool.
Well,
there you go. See, then you.
See, so it was funny. You should say, I wonder if Mark would know these guys, or want to talk to these guys. So it's interesting.
I've got an idea. Just before you go. So that is actually something I would, the Kaizen conferences, or any kind of conference with improvement people, I would love to do more of. How do we network people more? I mean, I know there's networking drinks, there's networking at morning tea and lunch, but you never find the people. You never know who's in the room. You never have that person who's going, I was looking through this list. Where is my blood service? Oh, look, I've got 2 blood service people. Did you know there was another blood service person in the room? No. Right, we need to go and find them. Come, where is this blood service person? And go find them and go, oh, there they are. Right. Actually do more of that.
How can leaders create that kind of space in their own business? Like, you think about a global company, or even a company with 300 or 400 employees, right? Employees don't always know each other. I often used to say, like at the post office where I worked, right? The plant had a couple of hundred people in it, and I only knew a few, but they're all individuals. They all have talents. They all have skills. They all have desires. They all have lots they bring to the workplace. How would you say to a business leader, you need to kind of do this kind of thing within your own environment network? Because I think there's an opportunity. If you want the answer to that question, you're going to have to watch episode 2 of my interview with Trish Wilson. I hope you found her as fascinating to listen to as I did, not only the accent, but just the way that she thinks and the way that she orchestrates getting like-minded people together. She's got a whole lot more to say in episode 2. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you give us a comment. Love to hear from you. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.